What's popular YouTube? Another day, another shameless ad plug on Thorin's channel.
I'm back to do my final preview for the Blast Austin Major, which is the Czechsnauts' third major in CS2. I'm obviously someone who drinks delicious gamer subs. This is a really nice flavour, Sakura Splash with Silver Veil GG. It's basically a delicious sour cherry, which isn't actually that sour. It's just tangy. It's got a really pleasant flavour. I find balances really well. Get 10% off everything on the Gamer Sub store using what code? I imagine you can guess. It's Thorin, aka esports in it. So THORIN. Then you get 10% off everything on their website. Now, for the final, I'm going to do it quite similar to how I did the other ones, where I'm going to run down a bunch of different angles and try and hit everything. We're going to do like the past matchups of the teams, the veto phase, how players are playing. I've got a couple of different angles, all because you obviously need to look more into the Mongol side to have any hope that there's any even play in this final, quite frankly. And then the intangibles, quite frankly, a lot of them are going to be based around what does this mean for Vitality, basically, because they're the ones where, spoiler, in about 9 hours after I record this video, they could have literally have established an era. It could literally be just the Vitality era. It basically already is, by the way. Like, even if they come second now, which would be crazy, and then, assuming they go straight back to winning right afterwards, it's going to be the Vitality era anyway. I've almost never been as sure of anything in CS. Like, there's certain teams where you just see the way that they win, not that they win, the way that they win. And it silences any doubts. So, if we get into this particular one, obviously, first thing to say is, in theory, the hard lifting for Vitality has now finished. Vitality is not a team who ever has to fear losing to Mongols. They even lost a map to them earlier in the year, and it just doesn't matter. They just smashed them anyway. You look at this tournament, as soon as Falcons went out, the joke would be, you were all laughing because you don't like the Saudis, or like, oh, Nico, aka Choco, oh, fucking modesty, you should have left G to apologise to Snacks, even though none of these memes make any sense, by the way. But the joke is, the most happy people should have been Vitality. That's the one team I actually think they have any degree of fear or sort of tension around playing. I don't even think they're scared of playing Spirit, because look, I think they do that thing that Astralis used to do with Simple back in the day, which is when Astralis is the best team, yeah, you acknowledge Simple is better than all your players, and he's the best player, but you just think to yourself, who gives a fuck? You get your numbers, mate. You pop off. We'll just avoid you wherever possible, and we'll just beat your teammates, and therefore we win as a team. So I think the difference is, when they play Spirit, they just think, let Donk get his. Ziwu's better than Shiro anyway. We'll win the game as it is anyway. And if Donk doesn't show up, you haven't even got a chance, and our map pool slaughters you. When they play against Mouse, in theory, that's the other team they should be nervous about, because Mouse on paper does have the potential to make them. I know it doesn't happen. I know it does not happen, but it is theoretically the case. Like, you can certainly imagine. I mean, you saw it actually in one of the maps yesterday. You saw on that Inferno game what Mouse is capable of when they play, not without pressure. That's the thing people have missed. When they rise to the pressure. That was the first time I've actually seen them against Vitality, or a team that would win the tournament, actually truly rise to the pressure and showcase an amazing performance. So I always told you, I actually always thought Tosh was a little bit overrated in the past, because actually he didn't do this in games like this. If you put a better player in there against him and a better team, actually he wasn't the guy who'd go down swinging and get crazy shots. So that was genuinely one of the best CT side Inferno performances in the history of CS majors, at least from CSGO and CS2. That was unbelievable. It wasn't just the kills, like the insane damage he did all the time. He was always in the right place. Also, it looked, quite frankly, I can see why they say they prepped their CT sides a lot, because it looked, quite frankly, like they had a really good sense of what to do to counter any kind of Vitality push onto a site. The way they would peak together, crossfire together, they'd do a 1-2 game, they'd beat you on one guy, then the other guy would peek out. It was really impressive stuff, actually. In fact, it reminded me, to some degree, of Na'Vi 2021, because if you remember, they would also play really compact in the sites, and then the problem was, as soon as you peaked, they would just peak together in a way where it's like you're fighting two people at once. So you only have one crosshair and can only fire one bullet into one head at a time unless they're lined up. With that said, I don't actually think Vitality feared them. Look, I do think they went into the series knowing you had to respect Mouse, because even though they'd won the 6 times in a row this year or whatever, you do still know that majors are different. In majors, you have more pressure. You're thinking, if you're Vitality, if we don't win the major, it's not that it was all for naught, but that's what this was all about. I mean, the joke really is, you would rather, I'm sorry, if you're a pro player, they would rather give up, fuck even just one or two. They'd give up literally nearly all of the trophies this year, except maybe Katowice, to win the major. And if you're a player that's never won the major, you'd give up the Katowice one too. Now, look, as an analyst and as a fan, I think if you don't win the major, it's still worth having all those titles either way. But I actually think it depends how many titles. If I was doing the porn stars, PAWN, where I'm trading like, oh, what's the major worth? I'd say I would still want Katowice at an event. I would still at least take that, because Katowice, I think, is a harder format to win. There's a BO5, for example, fantastically done tournament. None of this like silliness where people get knocked out in the MRQ. You never have any bollocks with the format because it doesn't even use Swiss system. All best of threes. I actually think that is, here's the thing, it's not a harder tournament. No, it is a harder tournament to win in the sense that, like, I actually think you have to play higher level CS. I think it's harder in the major in the sense you have to get lucky at times. And obviously, look, the prestige of the major is we call it the major. But quite frankly, if this was CS 1.6, if people don't know, we would just call Cologne and Katowice majors, because that's how impressive they are. And quite frankly, they would be considered better than this tournament if we called this one a major too. Maybe this would be the equivalent for Blast of a Katowice or a Cologne. So I actually think people miss that there was still a consideration in Vitality's mind that, like, look, we still have to take this seriously. We have to honour and respect the opponent. We have to beat them straight up. That's why I did think on Infernal, they didn't just capitulate. They could easily, by the way, just lost that 13-1. But they looked like Vitality, quite frankly, they looked like, even though they did know the map was lost, that they wanted to actually try to get like 6 rounds or 7 rounds just to sort of show, like, hey, we're not going to just get pushed around anyway. But the problem is, Mouse, if you know in general, the problem is that there's a reason they haven't been able to get to the trophy, and it's called Vitality. That's it, by the way, now. At this point in time, I actually think, look, the problem is that it's only the PGLs where Vitality skips, and quite frankly, the other elite teams skip it. But if you were to make a tournament tomorrow, that was every team in the world except Vitality, look, I would probably take Falcons to win it. But certainly, Mouse can beat them. Mouse could win some of those trophies. It's actually the thing I feel more sorry for with Mouse, is it's a bit like Team Liquid 2018. You barely ever get a chance to even play anyone except the team that always beats you in the final. And just like Astralis to Team Liquid, but also that was a microcosm of the bigger scene back then. Astralis checkmates you in every Veto, and Vitality checkmates every team in the Veto, but they especially checkmate the guys from Mouse, unfortunately. They just don't have any angle to get in on them in that sense. Like, the joke is, one of the few teams that had a decent Veto into Vitality is the team that beat them way back, isn't it? It's the, no, they didn't beat them, but gave them good games, which is the Aurora team, the former Eternal Fire. Because remember, Eternal Fire is a team that, like, will play the Anubis, actually has the real potential there, don't mind a cheeky bit of an Inferno here and there. Like, that team actually had a chance to. Their problem is, I mean, the joke is they can only beat you in a group stage, can't they? So if we go to Vitality, I do think to some degree, they're not actually playing the Mongols in this final. What they're playing is themselves and their poise as they stand on the brink of history. Because, by the way, if Vitality wins this tournament today, which they're incredibly likely to do, not just in a normal match anyway, which they would, but because of the fact that you expect Mongols to feel a lot of pressure, despite everyone going, they won't have any pressure. No, they actually will have a lot of pressure on them. I think that if you're Vitality, you're mainly just shadowboxing yourself here, because if you win this match, you could literally never touch a key again on a keyboard, and you could actually make the argument you are the greatest team to ever play any version of Counter-Strike. That would be a legitimate statement. If people don't know, you're going to think to yourself, people always do this. They always mistake. You can tell who not only wasn't there when Astralis was on top, but just doesn't remember it very well. Because you think of them winning, 3 back-to-back majors. Oh, man, they were like impossibly dominant. Well, yeah, over in terms of like consistent dominance and time span and number of times and how many times they beat the second team. Yes, that's all true. But the difference is, over a smaller time span, Vitality is the most dominant team to play CS in the modern era since NIP at the beginning of the game, because NIP never even used to lose a map, but there was no majors in their era, right? That's the problem. They didn't have the big prestige events, the big arena lands. In fact, I don't even know how many times they played in front of a crowd. It mainly just would have been the Starladder tournaments in ASWC in the early years, the odd DreamHack final, etc. So I think it's quite hard to compare that. That's like comparing Pele's era to like Ronaldo and Messi now, isn't it? So if you go and look at any of those teams, Astralis, by the way, the most tournaments they ever won in a row was 4, and that includes those banana Cop Blasts, which I used to call Blast of Wands. Then after that, you have Team Liquid, won 5 tournaments in a row. That included Blast Match. You had a really good Blast in there. And then they had some seconds before that. So they could have gone there. Vitality, if they win this tournament, will have won 7 tournaments in a row. And think of the bookend. Katowice first, incredibly important event. Then they win all the other really, really good S-tier events. Then they win the major to bookend that 7 in a row. And over those 7, by the way, you didn't lose a single best of 3 or best of 5 series. You lost it 1 BO1 to Legacy, which, by the way, I don't give a fuck about best of 1s. I always cared about the Team Liquid best of 3, best of 5 streak of 22. I never made it about, like, it's just match streak. That's why the NIP one, it's interesting. No one ever quoted their series one before. NIP's is a different streak. Theirs was the 87 maps in a row, which no one will ever do or even get ever close to again, understandably. But I think when you look at that team, that is dominance that you'll never see. Again, you'd have to go to NIP in 2012, early 2013 to find a team that's won more events in a row. I think NIP's won something like 9 or maybe 10 events in a row, but some of those were very small events, you have to understand. Some of those were like a small event in Germany where like a couple of the top 5 don't even attend the event, and you're just farming noobs and brand new squads, and people who are just fucking mixed teams will like scream on some team you've never heard of the players, or you couldn't even name the roster if I told you. Or in the final, you're playing like Natu and Narsu, like old 1.6 players who were just playing some early CS2, and no one even remembers got into a final because it was a small one. So the difference is the scale is what's nuts. That's the thing. How hard it is to play at this level where every top team has a coach, analyst, sports psychologist, they're taking boot camps, everyone's on business class flights, people are getting enough sleep, people have got like diets and nutritionists out there. Oh, there's so many unbelievable amount of things. By the way, when you take your player break, they didn't used to be a player break back. You take a player break, you go to the fucking Maldives with your girlfriend, you disconnect for 2 weeks, you're just looking at like perfectly transparent water, thinking about what you're going to do with your $35,000 a month salary, which by the way, it used to be like 1.5 times what the best player in the world made total prize money and salary when it was like the Forest, Neo, that sort of an era, maybe even going into the early Guardians and Kenny S's of the early CSGO era. So if you're Vitality, a lot of this is about what you're capable of doing. It's not about what MongolZ can do or will do to you. If you just play to at least a 7 or 8 out of 10 on the relative scale of Vitality's performance level, you are going to win this final, and you are very likely going to win it 2-0. If you are MongolZ, people will say, they're going to play without pressure, because those people have never been on a stage, right? You can play without pressure on map 1. I actually think you can largely only play without pressure if there's a massive underdog and not supposed to even be there. Maybe on the first half of map 1. And the real issue here is this. You can't play without pressure when you play against teams like Vitality, because think about when Mouse was getting absolutely battered on train. The problem was they didn't even get to feel like they played CS. Players like Spinks and Tosh just felt like I get 1 kill and then I just get killed immediately. Like, it's not even just that you're losing. It's that you're getting demoralized. They do that thing like Kobe Bryant used to do. They try to make you actually question, like, am I even good enough to be a top pro? Like, maybe I'm not a champion, because they don't just beat you head to head. They smother you. And I want to make one quick point, actually, about Vitality before we go into this Veto, which is Vitality isn't some super team. That's what people have missed. Even though, yes, we all talk about how CS2 is firepower dependent. I think it is. But I actually think it's more about getting efficient firepower out of key positions for your style. That's the flaw that, like, Falcons last year had that they couldn't make work. Team Liquid last year couldn't get working. They had good players. They even had certain players who in theory should have had firepower, but it was nowhere near the right places. By the way, MongolZ actually a pretty good example of having firepower in the right places. But if you look at Vitality as of now, I'll do a whole separate video on this when they win the major. You look at them, yes, Ziwu is a superstar, of course. Rops is actually playing like close to the best rifler in the game. He isn't, because Donk exists, unfortunately. But if you want to take Donk out the equation and have a discussion between Rops and Nico, that starts to get interesting. Throw Exertion in there, maybe. Sometimes Spinks. There's some pretty good players out there we can talk about in that sense. But realistically, that's 2 1A players for a normal team, but Ziwu's a 1A with nobody right now. I mean, unless he played, by the way, with like a Simple or something like that, and one of them rifled, he's always going to be the 1A option. When you go to the third player in your team, presumably you're going to say it's Flames, right? Or Flames E, as Scory always says. If you say it's Flames, Flames isn't even close to a superstar. I think sometimes, aside from the fact he's in Vitality, where your numbers get inflated, I'm not even sure he's a star player. Like, I thought last year, the interesting thing about him and Spinks and Flames was, it was actually sort of a tag team effect, and the fact that they don't have overlapping styles that sort of made it work. And then Spinks could farm bigger numbers because he was the lurky player, and then Flames did all the aggression for you, etc. Then you get to Mezzy. Mezzy is basically like a comparable fragging, actually, even though he's not as skilled. He's actually sort of like a British Zipnix, if you think about it. He just fills the holes. It seems like he never has any attitude problems. He's a guy who just adds to the environment. I presume he comms well. He used to be an IGL, so he seems quite smart in the game, and he positions himself well to allow the others to make plays. And then you have Apex. And the funny thing is, I actually think it's Apex's firepower in stage games that makes people think this is some sort of super team. Because your brain, remember, Apex used to be like a borderline star as an entry fragger 10 years ago. Maybe even up to like, 8 years ago, maybe. But you look at him in the modern day as an IGL. First of all, he is probably the best IGL in the game. And I don't say that because he won the trophies. I thought he was a contender for it last year. I just gave Alexi B the nod because I think he has less pieces to use. I thought Apex called a fantastic 2024. It really was conflicts within the team. The odd weird third map from Zebu here and there, or in the majors, just weird letdowns. Sometimes meeting miraculous runs from the phases of the. These are the only things that actually stopped them lifting a lot of trophies. I thought Vitality last year could have been the best team of the year. And as you saw, Spinks in Mouse, pretty fucking sick player, right? That was a baller lineup. That was all the ones they're going to look back on in the future. Go, why didn't we win everything that year? So you get this roster now. I think crucially, his style works really, really well for what they've got in this current team. But more importantly, his actual raw fragging, just literally watch the crosshair in these games. He isn't just going for players like he used to the 2 or 3 years before. He's actually making them work. And the problem is, if Apex goes off like that, then they start to look like a super team. Because then you have Mezzy win a clutch and get like a key kill late in a round. Apex does all this damage early on. Zebu's just floating around the map, AWPing, rifling, whatever. But they were still one of the best riflers in the whole game. Flames is doing all this crazy impact play on T side and is totally fearless. Then you have Rops, the master, just in his little office, waiting for timings, getting flanks off, holding an area where you always have to ask that question, just like get right back in there. Is Rops there? Half the time he is, half the time he isn't. You can never guess which it is. And then when he needs a clutch, not even necessary like it used to be in FaZe Clan, he'll do that too. He'll win you the odd clutch here and there too. And so as a result, you add that package together. How does anyone beat Vitality? Like at this point in time, that's why you have to start looking at the other squads and saying, can you do roster moves? Because otherwise, to beat Vitality, we need like other teams to come out of time machines and have time to play this game. And then let's see if they could even do it. I actually, when I watch Vitality play now in the big games, I actually do think to myself, fuck. Even if you did bring Astralis out of a time machine so they were still in their old ability level and give them a year, would they win? Now, part of me says yes, because that team's actual secret wasn't even just in the server. It was figuring out problems and adapting between series. So that would certainly be interesting. But even then, maybe I'd have to have them play them 3 times. If I go back to the old Fnatic, yeah, there was Super Club, blah, 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 all the rest of it. You know what? I don't know how Olafmeister at his peak would handle playing against someone like fucking Zewu or a closer like Rops. So that's why it's so exciting, this final. It's not because of the matchup, unfortunately. It's not because of Vitality versus MongolZ. It's because of who Vitality is, what they've done, and what they are now on the cusp of doing. And quite frankly, I'm just going to say it right now, I think they're going to do it. In fact, why am I saying the thing? They're going to do it. They are going to win this final. So let's get into this Veto. So crucially, they have played loads of times. First of all, look at the map pool. So this is just because enough times passed that not enough people have dared to get Anubis against Vitality. But spoiler, they're really good on Anubis too. So they 13-2'd FlyQuest, who gives a fuck, but they 13-6'd Spirit. If you don't know, Spirit does play Anubis. They've worked that into their map pool, more around the middle area, but it's one that they had to work in because of what happened last year. Interesting. I probably didn't I? So that isn't an advantage. MongolZ is, at the moment, actually their best map now probably is Mirage. But historically, their comfort map has always been ancient. They do pick Mirage, by the way. The comfort map has always been ancient. And the big problem you've got immediately is that it's the permaban of Vitality every single time. So already you're 1 map down. By the way, Vitality is excellent on Mirage too. I mean, they won it yesterday when Mouse picked it. Mouse picked that as their map pick. Train was supposed to be a Joker pick that initially everyone was going to ban like Vertigo. But the MongolZ does ban it every single time unless the opponent bans it. But the joke is, Then people tried using it because no one could beat Vitality. And it turned out Vitality is unbeatable on that map too. And so as a result, Vitality just plays it anytime they feel like it in a decider and wins it. And they only ever had to pick it once, by the way, which was actually against Falcons, where they themselves tried to get a bit cheeky in the Veto. So then you go and you look elsewhere. There is nowhere to go for Vitality. For MongolZ, against Vitality. Because not only are the win rates all better, these are all, by the way, including like all those semis and finals against the best teams in the world. And look at the fucking sample size. Remember, these guys are always in the final. So their win percentages are even more impressive than anything anyone else does. I mean, MongolZ even occasionally play like the fucking PGLs, don't they? So they should be farming. And their numbers even then aren't hitting 70% on any map. So this is going to be so tough. So let's go and look at some of these past series. They have literally played 4 series already this year. Twice Mongols got a map. They got Nuke twice. Once it was a Stomp, but that was the Dallas, where if you remember, the tournament before this, that was the one where Vitality actually looked off their game, even though they still didn't lose the series and still won the LAN. So Mongols came out with, they got one there, and that was actually a playoff game. Oh, sorry, that was the group decider. There you go. Now, the problem there is this. That's actually not a pressure game. If you don't know, the group decider is where the loser already goes to the playoffs as well. And on the other side, the bracket to... is that even true? Do you go to the other side? Yes, because you'd be second in the group. So in this particular scenario, you're already guaranteed to go to the arena. So unfortunately, this is a game where if you're Mongols, you don't play with pressure. You don't have the pressure of the arena. Oh, we could win the event. This is just like, hey, give it a try against Vitality. If you do well, good on you. You're never supposed to be able to beat them. They're probably going though. And either way, we're in the playoffs, aren't we? So winning that one, okay. Just starting with a nice CT half. All right. This is the more important thing. You barely lost on Mirage. And you had a very respectable game on Inferno, which in theory, Vitality is supposed to be unbeatable on. Obviously, that hasn't happened in the last couple of times they played it. Then you had, it started though, back at Katowice, when Vitality first just became absolutely unbeatable. Comprehensively took care of you there. Then you go to the Pro League. Now, this is a match which was in the semi-finals, but Pro League isn't like a giant stadium type tournament. Your one win was Nuke there, which was very close. It was overtime. The problem is you got your arse absolutely handed to you on the other 2 maps. This is where they tried their own Anubis pick. They were like, we pick Anubis. And then the first half was the fucking struggle bus of them just getting it shit down their throat. And they got 3 CT rounds on fucking Anubis. And then just got completely closed out immediately. Then you go to the Inferno that was left over because you took out Dust 2 because you were scared of that insane Vitality Dust 2. And they also did not let you play after the first half. The first half is just them destroying you completely. You can't do shit to them. And then they also just close you out clean. Then you had one other game, which was in Melbourne. Now, listen, I never know how people are affected by travelling to places as far away as Australia, but this is really, really disturbing shit. I mean, look how much you got your shit pushed in here. So what you've actually had over all the matches you've played, these 4 matches, is you basically had 2 nice close games. This wasn't bad. You had 1 big win, 1 time, at Vitality's worst event, aside from Blast Bounty. And then you had a really, really laboured OT win on Nuke over here. So you can say to yourself, maybe you could go, what about Anubis? Let's see in this Veto. Because we're also going to have to look at recent form, and spoiler, it isn't great for the Mongols. You need them to be an amazing Nuke team. You need them to be a specialist on Anubis, which they've certainly tried to get it right up there. It isn't happening. That's the main problem here. So let's look at the most recent Veto, and you'll see it'll probably be the same Veto this time. So Mongols removes Train. You know why that is, don't you? They always do. Of the last 18 series they've played, the only time they didn't remove Train is when they played G2 at this tournament. They removed Anubis instead because they knew G2, they gambled and that they wouldn't pick it, and G2 didn't pick it, floated it. So it wasn't a problem. So instead they banned Anubis. Vitality 100% of the time bans Ancient. They're just going to do that now anyway. This is even a great team to ban Ancient against. So then you go. That's why actually I wish we'd have seen that phase game on Ancient. That would have been the 3rd map if they'd have gotten through that Anubis in the end. Mongols picks the Inferno. Now, listen, you probably should do that, quite frankly. Being as I don't believe you actually think your Anubis is that sick. Anubis or Inferno probably should be your picks if you're Mongols. The problem is, most of the time you pick Mirage just like Mouse tried to yesterday. But if you saw how Mouse got clapped on Mirage and how the two teams, Legacy and Mouse, were able to beat big Vitality. Look, I don't know that Legacy aren't supposed to be super fraggers, but I don't know that you can necessarily hold them down like that. And they'll have such a sort of slow start to get in the game. But those are your only sort of ways to win, because they're at least maps you pick. Like, if you don't know, for the last 18 times, they did actually pick Inferno 4 times, the Mongols. And if we go back, they picked it against Mouse at Dallas, Vitality at Dallas, and Na'Vi at PGL Astana. So if I'm them, I think I don't believe they actually think the Anubis is good enough. And quite frankly, even that phase game would make me second guess myself. I would just do this Inferno pick. I think it's your best possible chance. Even then, by the way, the problem is when you pick Inferno, they can start CT side. And if they start CT side, they can do to you what Mouse did to them yesterday. So the real problem there is you can also get that suffocating feeling on the T side where you can't get in the game, where if you're 9-10, you're nervous to peak because everyone's going to frag you. If you're fucking Senzu, you're on the stage. Now, by the way, that's a key factor. Senzu has played way better. He's going to have to be his best ever today. So you pick the Inferno. I think that's a pretty good pick overall. Then you come to the Vitality pick. Now, the joke is, because you've actually lost the 2 nukes, if you're Vitality, you could pick nuke. As I told you, it's not actually that sick a map for Mongols. It's just because you yourself can now visualize losing on it to them specifically and what the feeling of that was like. Maybe you don't want to do that, right? Maybe you want to switch up your Veto. You always have that option as Vitality. You can go elsewhere with your pick because you actually are just that good, aren't you? So I actually think if you're Vitality, nuke is your favorite map to pick. And you go, okay, they lost close to Mouse on it. They had also lost to Vitality big time on it at Melbourne. Mouse had beaten them on it back then. This is even the Brazilian Furia, by the way. And this is the Rando team that nobody even fucking could name all 5 players of. So I don't hate it if you do a nuke pick. That's just essentially a statement. If you don't know, I think Apex and Vitality have always enjoyed nuke. Ziwi's always been exceptional on it. Obviously, that's probably his real signature round, the 1v4 against G2 from the Blast Paris Major, right? So you can certainly pick that if you want. The difference is, though, I expect Mongols should be prepped for that. That is the one that they should actually expect. If you pick, we're going to try and bring back some of the things from before. We're going to give you a different look from something that we showed in that game. But you can go elsewhere if you want. Remember, they're only going to ban Train. So you have the option of where you want to go. Like, spoiler, you can just pick straight into the Dust 2 right then. And if you pick Dust 2, I think you will absolutely obliterate Mongols. If you yourself pick the Mirage, I think you will fucking curb stomp them. I know it's their pick, so I probably wouldn't do it myself. But yeah, I think a Dust 2 pick's good. I think it's fine to just pick Nuke 2. Then when we come to the second Veto, in the past, Mongols removed Dust 2 if it was available. So if Dust 2 isn't the one that was picked, they will remove it, in my opinion. In fact, you look in general, it's their most removed map. After that, they remove Nuke, second most, believe it or not. They're not even that good on it themselves. So the joke is, I actually don't think they'll remove it against Vitality in this particular case. If Vitality picks Dust 2, I think they will obviously try and just make Nuke the decider and just roll the dice in that sense. But I'm imagining Mongols will do the Inferno pick, so therefore they'll remove Dust 2 second. Then Vitality has the choice of Anubis and Mirage. And I don't think Vitality actually wants to play Anubis. I think they just play it when people make them. That's not a map in general they're going to. Like, they've basically allowed it any time through. So, no, they never allow it through, sorry. So I actually do think, quite frankly, it's up there with Dust 2 as their most banned. They just ban Dust 2 selectively against opponents, like a Spirit or something like that. I do think you let it go to Mirage. Now, the good news here is this. Mirage is one of your favourite maps. It's actually your main pick if you're the Mongols. The bad news is this. You aren't going to get to play it in the final. So that's, you know, you can always dream of what could have been if you'd have gotten to that one. The problem is, you're going to get destroyed on your Inferno pick. I'd be surprised if you even get 8 rounds. And then if Vitality picks Nuke, maybe you've got the smallest of chances. I don't think so. If Vitality picks someone like Dust 2, you are just cooked. The series is over already then. And you better have made it like epic and won Inferno. Or it's just over. The series is just over at that point in time. So then if we go and look at the players, because this is a series, massive, I don't think there's any style, any call you can do from Mongols. You need actual raw player power. And you need players from Vitality to underperform. And that's the toughest part. So let's go look at Mongols first. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at them at this tournament. And then I'll just do both actually. We're going to look at them at this tournament. and we're going to look at them before this tournament and see like what is the best case scenario. And in fact, I know what we'll do. I know what could be fun. Maybe we go and check a bunch of their playoff matches. Like this is the one from this tournament. So at this tournament, 11 maps, decent amount of play. Senzu is smurfing and crucially has shown up in the playoff matches, which was, by the way, the biggest factor causing them to fail in the past. I've seen Mazzinho have a great series. I've seen 9-10 be here and there. Oh, actually, he's kind of smurfed these playoffs. The key is Senzu on paper should always be their best player. You watch the eye test, it's really, really strong. I told people back in autumn of last year, like this guy, if their team ever gets, funny enough, the results they're getting now, he's a top 20 player. He's an HLTV top 20 player. Not high up, probably like 18th or something, but he has that capability. The problem was, still very young. He's only 18 now. So it's also sort of understandable. And he was inexperienced. He wasn't in IHC. Well, it wasn't in playoffs anyway. But it's only really last year he's gotten his career actually going at tier 1. So you don't... This is why between Aurora and Mongols, it's Aurora I've been out on for ages when I see them choke. When I see Mongols choke, I'm like, they're still young enough, still inexperienced. The stars, crucially, it's 1 or 2 stars that are playing bad and consistently Senzu. If those things ever fix, they can win. I've seen Santaris play great in the playoffs. I've seen them have big performances. I've seen them win a key map. I've seen them get the Veto they want. Aurora, it's easy to be out on. The Mongols, you shouldn't give up on. And this tournament was a great reason why. So you look overall at this tournament. He is smurfing. You're getting great fragging out of 9-10, and he hasn't collapsed so far. Blitz is one of the best fragging IGLs in the world, perhaps only exceeded by Apex. And by the way, his numbers are probably better than Apex some of the time. But I just think if you look, overall, he is the better player, eye test-wise as a fragger. Mazzinho actually hasn't done that well at this tournament. He was the guy late last year that leveled up and gave them more power, and you thought, well, maybe even if Senzu doesn't. And Tekno's just their worst player. That's why everything's about, like, he's a great guy. Yeah, that just means you'd say all the skills in the game first if you had him, mate. So he's just your glue guy. He's just your fill player, isn't he? But then if you go and look at this team, what we'll do is we'll look at the whole year first. Because last year, they were on the brink to make playoffs in every tournament. This year, they seemingly make the playoffs pretty much all the time. So they played 99 land maps this year. Senzu obviously isn't at the fragging level he is at this tournament. 9-10 is only a bit below. That's all right. Blitz is lower. Mazzinho's actually similar. Tekno's quite similar. So at the moment, you're getting a little bit of a glow up from your rifle star, aggressive rifle star at that, and your AWPer. By the way, that's exactly what I want. Again, it's not about having everyone frag. I've got to have my best players frag in the right way. And the reason why it gives you a tiny chance against Vitality is I love this style of play Mongols have. I always call it, if you know StarCraft, the Koreans had all these English words they'd sometimes use as like loan words, where there just wasn't something Korean you could say apparently that like was descriptive enough. So they would actually, even in English, while speaking Korean, call the kind of style of play. If you remember, there's a Terran player called 4GG who beat like Jaedong and Flash and won an MSL. And he also won some like StarCraft 2 tournaments, and he had a style called timing attack. As in, what you do is it's all about like getting ready, reading the defense, and then you're just going to pick a time and you commit to it. The key is the commit. You don't, like, here's the difference. Vitality doesn't play that way. Vitality plays aggressive and up-tempo, but they're absolutely willing to cancel an attack. They're willing to do a fake cancel, hold for 10, 15 seconds, rotate one person, then still go back on the attack. The Mongol style is more like, once we go at the timing, we're going to pick just the moment where we think they've used up some utility, they might have rotated a guy off, their guards dropped because we haven't shown anything outside the site. That's why the Inferno T-side could be fun as an opener for this series, by the way. They just hit and you all go as fast as possible. And think about 9-10 style of AWPing. When he's actually in the flow of a round, it's more like Brokey style. Like you just rush in, you do really quick shots. They're not like standing just stationary. That's not his style. That's not where he's at his best. So if you look overall for the year, T-side, Senzu is easily your best player. He's even the one you rely upon, by the way. Not as much as in the past. Obviously, you said Tekno in first sometime. 9-10 is an incredibly aggressive AWPer. Think about a lot of AWPers. Some of them, by the way, are like 10%, 12. I think she was like 12% or something, 15. The idea 20% opening, and you get a lot of success. That shows you're not just baiting, by the way. I told you he's not really the passive style AWPer. CT side, of course, he's farm. Wait a second, I need this over here. CT side, of course, he's carrying. He's an AWPer. AWPers always have the great KD on CT side unless something's gone drastically wrong. Senzu's still very good, though, and that's where your IGL blitz, where he's not having to call as much, he also pops off and frags pretty well. By the way, pretty decent numbers by Mazzinho. So the X-Factor player, by the way, for this series, like, Senzu just has to play awesome. 9-10, I think if he's good enough, can make it interesting. But if you want the X factor, it's probably Mazinho on the rifle. Because I think Blitz is going to have his hands so full figuring out on both sides, what am I doing with Vitality? How's their defense work? So remember, the other problem with the Vitality now is you can't do what you used to do against super carries like Ziwu and Simple and Nico when they were just far away the best player, which is you can avoid them. You can't avoid Vitality anymore. I don't even think you should. Unless it's just that Ziwu's smurfing. You have to just actually honour that they play the spots on the map. And if it makes sense in the tactic to go to this site now, you got to do it even if Ziwu's there. Because you know what? The other site's probably ROPS. Or the other site's fucking some insane performance by Apex just peaking everywhere. Like, you can't be cynical against Vitality. The joke is they're the only ones who can be cynical against anyone right now. But let's go and have a look at some of the matches, actually. What we'll do is look at some of the playoff matches where they choked this year. So we'll go all the way back. So there was this one here, but they played Eternal Fire. But even so, it was a playoff match. The problem is that's another choker. When two chokers play each other, that doesn't count as you got over choking. Then they played Vitality in the semis. We'll go to, I think they just played Astralis in the first round, didn't they? And got immediately knocked out. Yes, quarterfinals there. Playoffs. Quarters, they beat Na'Vi, which was big, but that was also because it turned out we didn't fully know it yet. Na'Vi actually fucking sucked. Then they played Vitality again. Blast Lisbon, G2. This was just group stage because they get grouped. Bucharest. This was the one with Dexter, remember? That they also got grouped there. Melbourne. That was the semis. So they played against Liquid in the round of 6. Solid win, but also quite close. And we're going to look at how people perform and then ask ourselves, can that happen in this final? And then Astana. Let's see. I think you got grouped in this one too. No, you got the quarters of that one, but this time you lost to Aurora, who were the fellow chokers. Dallas. You played against Mouse in the semis. And then you had another Aurora game where you got to beat them in the quarters. Right, let's do it. So all the way back in Katowice, you played Eternal Fire, who sadly are horrific playoff chokers. And Xantares was pretty good, but here's the thing. Your boy Blitz, IGL, the king, just fucking went crazy. Techno popped off. Senzu wasn't even that good. So... sorry, Techno is not getting anywhere close to these numbers. I'd be shocked if he's even their third best player. If he is, by the way, they're probably in deep shit. So that doesn't really help you. Then you go into the Vitality series. They got clapped, although this was not bad, because they clawed it back on Nuke. Senzu, quite poor. Mazinho, non-existent. 9-10, just all right. Bits is a top fragger. It's not really a good sign when he's your top fragger, even though he is a good fragger. Then you had Cluj-Napoca against the Astralis with Cadian, remember? The bad Astralis. Senzu shitting the bed again. 9-10, pretty good. You look at these numbers, by the way. They lost to that fucking team. OT on info. This is their map pick. Mirage. This is why people call this team chokers. It's not the case that they're just playing better teams. They aren't. Then they got to play Na'Vi, although Na'Vi's been sus themselves, had firepower issues. This time, Techno top fragged and Mazin, again, like, Senzu's just good. So even in series, you're winning in some of these playoffs. You're never really playing like the MongolZ. I showed you what MongolZ is like over the whole year. That's not the dynamic of MongolZ. Then you played Vitality. It was Pro League, so there's less pressure overall in terms of like not a massive arena, etc. Techno's your top fragger again, and Senzu's bottom fragging. And by the way, that's the same amount of frags, just 3 less deaths. And it's not even top fragging. He was just top by HLTV rating because it's fucking stupid in it. Then we had Melbourne. Big travel. In theory, you would have thought they'd be fans of Team Liquid, but obviously they're all going, fuck JKS. Because, no, they were like, fuck Liquid because they kicked JKS, even though, by the way, he wasn't very good at the end. Senzu again, pretty lackluster. Going up against good riflers, pretty lackluster, mate. Pretty lackluster. And 9-10 has to be your hero and carry just like at this tournament. Then they played Vitality. They got completely destroyed. and Techno's near the top again, and Senzu's right at the bottom, and Mazzinho doesn't turn up. So you're already getting kind of a paint by numbers of how a terrible series for MongolZ goes and how a really good one. Then you lost in a starter, decent size arena, etc., to Aurora. Senzu was just okay. 9-10 struggled. Mazzinho, good, I guess. Not really good enough, but obviously it could have gone to 3 maps. Then you had Aurora at Dallas in the playoffs. Close first game, but overall you win in a good game. Senzu finally turns up. And 9-10. This is more like this tournament now. That's how MongolZ plays. If you want to say they ever started to get over the chalky, look, they didn't because it's Aurora, but at least this is the type of a performance. This is the real MongolZ. That's the way to phrase it. This is the real MongolZ. So this is how I need to see it happen today. I don't even need this guy to frag 9-10. I just need him to win some nice, like maybe win like a 1v2 somewhere, have a round where he gets a 3k if they attack his site. Senzu's the guy I've put a lot of pressure on, a lot of pressure. And if Mazzinho plays decently, you have a chance. His problem is he's dipped a bit this year again. He's also very young if people don't know. Then you had the Dallas semi-final where it was very close. You absolutely could have gotten the 3 maps. You could have even won this series. You could have 2-0'd yourself, arguably. I mean, the first half of this one, you were even up big. Senzu didn't turn up. If he'd have turned up normally, they win this series. They'd be in the final already against Vitality, and this would now be a rematch, a replay of that final, wouldn't it? It's not even, by the way, like Jasun shit all over you. 9-10 did pretty good. So we have a sense already of what we need these players to play like. Now, if we go and look on the other side at Vitality, unsurprisingly, a lot of what I've just said is only going to apply to MongolZ because they're going to be in so much trouble against this team. It's utterly ridiculous. 91 maps played this year. The joke is MongolZ had almost many, but MongolZ play all the PGLs where you play a million best of 3s in Swiss and they're going to 2-2 games, etc. They have 91 maps because they just play a million best of 5s, win them all, and win every fucking series at the tournaments except the first one in the year. Ziwu's numbers are impossible, and you'd have a chance against him if it was more like Flames was your second best player. If Rops is going to do that, Rops would be the 1A player on any other team except Falcons and Spirit. If he was on Mouse, he would be their best player. He would be the player you're worried about. So you have Ziwu, who, by the way, is a rifler on T-sides often, map dependent. There's certain maps he CT rifles on, but they're the right ones now. Look at Rops' plus minus. Because he's a mega efficient rifler in terms of how he just doesn't give his life up for nothing. But he still gets his kills. He still has his impact. It's masterful with how he plays. So you've got a really good mid-round player. You've got an amazing closer. You've got a pretty good, like the KD's not that crazy, but he's playing entry half the time. Like, well, not half the time, fucking most of the time. Hard entry as well. Which is, by the way, totally within his style. He is more of a T-side player. So the impact this guy does, well, then you have like people like Ziwu following it up. And then to close out the round, if there even is a round, then it's Rops' turn. Then you have Mezzi. These numbers are too good for your 4th best player, playing a bazillion games of sample size. And then Apex, don't look at the rating, look at the KD. That's normally like the 4th best player or the 3rd best player on other normal teams. That's your worst player. And he's your IGL, by the way, and calling fabulously. So you go look on the T side. Ziwu has mega numbers, but he also doesn't go in first. Flames goes in first. Still pretty good. Rops obviously just closes out, so that's where he's going to farm loads and loads and loads of kills. Mezzi does pretty decently. CT side, unsurprisingly, Ziwu isn't just good, he is unplayable. Now what's weird is, I've seen it in this tournament too, at the big prestige events in playoff games, Ziwu, especially bizarrely on Mirage, maybe his best map ever, he just has these slow starts in the first half. The problem is, the other team basically has to win the game like 13-6 or 13-4. And if you give him enough rounds, he will not only warm up, later on he'll be getting 3Ks and he'll still end the game, 18-5 or some shit like that. So you can get your chances, but only early on. And overall, yes, one of the best CT side players ever. Forget even in the world, ever. Rops is obviously unbelievable still. I mean, remember, every time you don't have information on him, he can make rotations. He seems like a really smart player. Flames is doing bonkers numbers too, which is crazy because Flames is the player I always say has ants in his pants. He can't stop moving. And normally, that used to mean last year, he would sometimes do that thing where he'll peek like a short on Cat and just get fragged or take a stupid fight early. They're so good as a team, and he actually himself has some level of restraint that it doesn't matter. And by the way, on CT's side, everyone is plus a bazillion. Mezzy is really, really good. Look at that KD. Look, it's inflated because he plays with them, a la when Zipnix was in Astralis. Apex's numbers are really fucking good too. You can't even get a break against Apex. Who do you target? Remember, back in the day, let's say you play a Mirage. That's obviously a map that could be played today by Mongols. Classically, if Karrigan's B on CT or Zeus is B on CT, you go and fucking target them. If MSL's B on CT, you go and you target those players. You isolate them, you fake off the rest, you force rotations, and you just beat that player over and over and over again with your more skilled players. How do you do that when even Apex frags out? When Mezzy can do 1.22 for the year? You can't do shit against these guys. And then on T side, the most attempts by far is Flames. For how many attempts he takes, and the fact that I don't consider him a superstar player, that is still a decent entry rate. This is unbelievable. He's not baiting either, by the way. That is actually mind-blowing. Like, look, it's not like what Donk does on T-side, because Donk does Flames' style half the time and gets like numbers comparable to that. And for the entry attempts, it's not a crazy amount of entry attempts, but it's good. It's good. Rops understandably just cleans up the round. But look at Apex. When Apex goes in sometimes, he's doing a pretty good entry clip. And then even your boy Mezzy, who does the least, even he still has his successes there. Like, again, T-sides from this team, very, very, very difficult to deal with. So I just don't know where you even go. Where does MongolZ even go to have a chance in this series? I genuinely feel like you need the following things to happen before we can start a discussion that you're going to win. In the map pool, there's nothing you can do. Like I say, you could try a crazy Anubis pull. I don't know that you believe in that. You could try this Inferno angle. I could see Vitality just absolutely destroying you on Inferno today and it quickly deleting the memory of the Legacy and the Mouse games. Sadly, Mouse didn't win the series, so a lot of people will probably forget that Toshy performance. I think first and foremost, I don't know that you're actually ever going to get a bad series out of Ziwu in a scenario like this. I've never said he's like a choker in the big map. I think if you can get him to a third map, or you can beat him on the first map because he starts slow. Okay, so you need a slow start from Ziwu on the first map. Okay, by the way, if it ends up being an Inferno, not impossible. If it's a nuke, you're in a lot of trouble, I think. It's a map, you cannot fuck around with him on either side of that map. After that, I think you probably need Flames to feed a little bit on T side. If that happens, maybe it's plausible. Then he gets eaten up by the 9-10s of the world, some easy kills for the Mzenios and the Senzus of the world. That's to give you a chance. I've had to have two things happen there that overall, the Flames one happens occasionally, the Z one just doesn't happen. But let's imagine it happened today. That still won't win you the match. Then you need Senzu to play at the absolute level he's played at in this tournament, which is very, very good. If he plays like that, which unfortunately you wouldn't expect him to, because guess what? That was like 2 best of 3s against FaZe Clan, a brand new roster in terms of a 5-man lineup, not with that much prep, by the way. Then they played against Pain. Pain fucking is like an all-right team in group stages. In a playoff of a major semi-final, they suck. They're one of the worst teams to ever make the semis of a major. So you kind of farmed noobs there, in my opinion, in terms of semis of a major. Like, that was too easy. 9-10 doesn't have to be amazing. Doesn't even have to hit the numbers he's had at this tournament overall. He just has to get impact frags. And then when you go down, Blitz, I think he'll be here or there. I'm not sure how he'll do. The main problem you have is this. If Mazzino's going to be an X Factor, he hasn't been so far. And then also, I'm just going to put it out there. If Techno really feeds, I mean really feeds, then it's all out the window anyway. It all just goes straight out the window. So normally, if people know, I love to find an underdog angle. I love to find a way where like there's a Veto angle or there's a style of play angle. I don't know what the coach of Mongols could possibly say to them to inspire this as a victory. If they win, by the way, such a crazy outlier, I'll do a whole video just on them and how they won and what they did and how historic it is, and I'll contrast it against all the other great upsets in history, because this would be equivalent to a Vanguard if they'd have beaten fucking Astralis at like 2019 Starladder. And even then, by the way, I'm actually probably giving them a little bit of a generous reading there, because they were at least playing the Astralis that built them back into form. They hadn't won tournaments since back at like Blast Sao Paulo or some shit like that way earlier in the year. Vitality wins every tournament and every time against Mongols. So I'm sorry, Mongols cannot win this. Vitality wins the series, probably a clean 2-0. And then we're just talking about era, greatness, how long can it go on for? Will anyone ever reach this level of CS again? Who can stop them? What roster moves should everyone make, etc.? You know, I'm always rep my set, and the people who've got my back are the following people who support my videos: Matt Pugnatio, Rajcula, Jasun, Jensen Goh, Tosh, Thooorin, and you know, the all-time ride or die, Jerky's Minion, isn't it? Special thanks to him. Do you want to suggest a topic or a guest for my content? Want to find out who the upcoming interview subjects are? Do you want to take part in one of those long discussions with me where you set the topics? Maybe you want to ask me a question for my video AMA? Well, all of those perks and more are available where? At the Patreon link in the description box below. So put your money where your mouth is and join the Scroominati today. You dig?